Hey, Steve. How you been, man? Yeah, long time no see. What's that? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
This is our big week for all the public involvement that we're doing for our master plan update. So I've been, 7 a.m. to,
You and me both, man. Oh, well, not 10 p.m. Oh, shoot.
last night was midnight,
Oh, my gosh.
but
No thanks.
last night before we went till, and the night before that, we were, it's hard to count that as work, although I was out with the consultants making plans.
Oh, yeah, I get you.
Initially,
Yeah,
we just went out to dinner and talked through our plans till
perfect.
8 or so, and then
Hey, man, write that one
tomorrow
off.
night, yeah. And tonight, or tomorrow morning, we've got our department director one. You got that on your calendar?
I'm sure I do.
Tomorrow at
Department directors?
9 o'clock at the park shop.
Well, I'll let you know here momentarily. I don't know that I do. Tomorrow morning. Oh, all city department focus group.
That's the one.
At 9?
Is it at 9? I think it's at 9.
Yeah, I have one at, I have a meeting at 10. How long is that supposed to be?
It's supposed to be an hour and a half, but
Okay.
if you,
Yep, I have that on there. I do have that on there. It's so weird. I don't know how you end up with, 2 meetings that overlap. Oh, I mean, I get it, but I mean, hello?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody in person. Again, appreciate you finding time out of your busy days to assist the city here with the quarterly impact fee study. What we'll do is we'll first call the meeting to order at 1:05 on November 17th. And then we'll follow that with a roll call, and then we'll look at the agenda, make sure the agenda is where we want it to be. So we'll do roll call first. David Fulkerson. Jonathan Wardle.
Here.
John Nesmith.
Here.
Spencer Martin. And Josh Cummings is out today. Just to give you an update on the roll call, you notice that Butch Whedon, he has stepped away from his role, a voluntary role, so we have 2 vacant spots, so we're still working on trying to fill those for the committee. So just want to let you know, Butch was not able to renew his agreement with the city, so we'll find a spot or a person to fill his role for the next 2 years. The agenda is provided to you on your desk. We do have 4 items. I do want to let you know that number 2, the police precinct update, will not be occurring today. We'll have that for the next quarterly update. So I want to let you know that. And then, so I'll be removing number 2, and I'll be adding in 3.1. It's going to be your fiscal year 22 budget financials. So I forgot to add that in there. You have your 21 actuals, and I'll also provide you your 22. So with that, the agenda will be project update on fire stations 7 and 8, update on fiscal year 21 results for the impact fee fund, fiscal year 22 budget update, and then the last item will be discuss approach to completing the impact fee study. So with that amended agenda, are there any other agenda items that you would like to change, discuss, or accept as presented? If not, we'll go ahead and adopt that agenda accordingly. So with that, we'll jump into topic number 1, which is provide an update on the fire station. We do have the chief of fire here, Chris Bloom. He's going to provide you an update on where he is with the impact fee monies for fire stations 7 and 8. And I'll hand it over to you, Chris, if you wouldn't mind just providing them an update on that. Before I do that, Chris, Chief did provide you a, I guess this will be the
It's an elevation.
elevation of the
Station 7.
stations. And that is part of his presentation. So Chris, all yours, Chris.
Todd, do I just stay here, or do you want me to go up to the podium? Here? Sit here, sit here. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'll try and give you guys a pretty concise update on fire stations 7 and 8 as it relates to the impact fees. We are on the backside of the schematic design and development that has been completed for both fire stations. The elevation that you see for Station 7 will be the same elevation for Station 8 as well. And so what you notice there's 3 apparatus bays. That's where the fire engines or ladder trucks or paramedic units would reside. These 2 stations are very similar in design to the Fire Station 6 that's over on Linder and Overland that was built a couple of years ago. The design team is currently working on the construction documents. There have been several meetings that have occurred over the past couple of weeks and month, actually, to discuss value engineering to make sure that we're keeping the project in line and on time with the approved budget that we've been allotted. We're expected to have a completion of the construction documents in the first to middle of January, which we're even allowing to extend to February, and have bid packets out in the 1st of March. Groundbreaking on a staggered construction of these 2 is expected to begin in May or June of 2022 with a 12 to 13 month construction time. ESI has been engaging with subcontractors at this time to let them know the scale and scope of the project, and they're going to be assisting in the competitive bid process for these projects. Currently, we're conducting interviews to establish an eligibility list for firefighters. That's important that we have that ready and available so that when these stations are completed, they will be staffed. Both of the fire engines that will be housed in Station 7 and 8 have been approved by City Council, and actually we just signed the PO, the final PO for those 2 apparatus. And they as well have about a 15-month lead time, so they should be here just in time for the opening of one, if not both of the stations. And so if there are any other questions, that's what I have as far as an update on what's going on with stations 7 and 8.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. And as a reminder, and we'll talk about it in fiscal year 22, the impact fee study from 2019 that we completed did have the availability to construct 2 fire stations up to 12, the value there. So again, Chris is meeting the current impact fee studies requirements and requests of 2 fire stations. And how we fund those, again, those will be discussed at the next impact fee study that we're going to have in item number 4. We do have the funds today to pay for one of those completely. We do not have enough funds saved up because it's a 10-year impact fee study, so we do it over 10 years. We're just building 2 stations faster than the 10 years, so we'll figure out the financing component for that second station, which will be part of item number 4 and the next impact fee study. But for the time being, we're going to use general funds to pay for the other station. How we as a committee want to consider paying back or not paying back, that's up to us for the next impact fee study. So all the funds have been approved for Chris. Chris is moving forward with the 2 projects that follow the impact fee study with 2 stations. So I just want to add that in there. Again, Chris is here to answer any questions. Station 6 was the station that we took you guys to last time. So now you have a visual idea of what Chris is building for stations 7 and 8. John?
Chief Bloom, can you just give us the timeframes again on the construction we're doing both of those at the same time, is that correct?
Hello, sorry. The intention is for the fire stations, both of the fire stations, to be bid as a package. There's an implied value in doing that with doing 2 stations at once. However, when it comes to breaking ground and constructing the station in the south, Lake Hazel and Eagle will probably be several months ahead of the station that's scheduled to be Station 8 in the north. And the reason for that is civil engineering and some design elements that are varying from the 2 locations. In the design development phase of it, it was, I don't want to say a foregone conclusion, but there was a high probability of us getting the approval to build the station in the south. And so the design development went ahead while they paused the design portion, the schematic design for the north station. So the south station is already further along, but the intent is to bid both of them and have one of them begin before the south station being started before the station in the north.
Thank you. And I guess the approximate date for that south station to commence, is that late summer? Is that?
No, sir. We're really hoping to have shovels in the dirt in May or June of 2022.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Chris? And in our next quarterly meeting, we'll be providing you, as the committee, updates on how the fire stations are going, the police station's going. As Mr. Sidaway has a large project going on with impact fee, so we'll continue to provide you guys updates on what we're doing with the money, how's the construction process look like. So every quarter we'll provide you guys updates, since we have 3 major projects this year for you, which hasn't been the case in the last few years. So we want to definitely keep you in the loop of how we're doing on those particular parks, fire, and police projects. So if we have no other questions for Chris Bloom, again, we can say thank you, Chris, for giving an update to the committee here, and you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the committee meeting. But again, we respect that. We know that you have some other meetings you have to get to. So again, appreciate it. Unless Steve has a question.
I was just going to ask if I could give a very brief update, since I have to leave quickly for a 1:30 also.
We're ahead of schedule, so go ahead, Steve.
I just wanted to report that last night at City Council, the City Council did approve the contracts for Discovery Park Phase 2 for the amount of about $12.6 million. of impact fees to go towards construction of that park. So that's a big deal. Our total budget for that phase is about 14 million and change. And so we've still got a couple of specific design build pieces to add in, one being the skate park and one being the bike park with pump track and things like that. So once we get those two additional pieces added and obligated, then I know later on the agenda, and I may be gone for it, but discuss to your approach for completing the impact study. I just wanted to throw out that we had a very big milestone last night, and I wanted to report that first, and then we still have these two other pieces that we hope to get obligated, and then we'll be ready to move forward. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Steve. That is helpful. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Steve. So with that, that closes out item number 1 with the updates on the 2 stations and the Discovery Park. That moves us on to the next item, which is a fiscal year 21 actual update. Again, please note that these are unaudited figures, but we're pretty confident that these are 99.9% completed. Our audit won't occur until January, but we're pretty confident the numbers should not change from this point forward. In your packet I gave you after the agenda, you'll find 7 pages that look kind of like a financial display with fiscal 21 on the top of them. Those are the actual financial reports from our ERP system. They're just provided to you as backup. I'm going to lean on pages 8 and 9, which look more like Excel that I've provided you in the past every year, which is called the impact fee year actual results with fund balance position. It's in a landscape format. That's where I'm going to go. This is your historical actuals, which do have the 21 actuals embedded into this. So again, the first 7 pages are more of a backup for you from our financial system. So if we're looking at pages, I guess it would be 8 and 9, but it's the impact fee year actual results with fund balance. I'm going to start at the top, which is the police department. On the far left is 2014. I will just be focusing on 2021, which is the second to last column on the right. What we did was we put your revenues on top, we put the operating expenses kind of in the middle, then we put our capital at the end, and then we give you a running fund balance projection on the bottom of that. So with that, let's go over the results for fiscal 21. So police department brought in $437,000 in revenues. You can see that's a little bit lower than last year. Our current projections for the city of Meridian are following this. Again, we hit our peak, what we believe, in development a couple years ago. We're still very strong and healthy in development. It's just we're not at the pinnacle. We're not at the highest point. These are still very strong, healthy numbers. We're happy with them. We're just not at the pinnacle that we were a couple years ago. We had 0 operating expenses in fiscal 21. We had some capital expenses based on some precincts. As you see there, we have some expenses in there for 2 precincts because that's what we were projected to build. Council has only approved 1. So we're going to we'll do some accounting work on our side because that second precinct won't be built in the next budget year. So again, though I think they're going, I was going to say they're building 1 precinct. I don't know the exact location, if it's north or south at the moment. So you'll see that there is expenses associated to both because that's where we're moving forward with, and unfortunately we did not get the funding for those. And then the Public Safety Training Center. This is the new scenario village that we're going to show you guys next spring. That's going to be our next road trip to show you guys what that turned out like. You're more than welcome to go over there now. It is available for you guys to view, but we try to do it as a group and show the committee members what the results of the projects that you've approved. So with that, you can see that we had the revenues of 437, the expenses of 703. We reduced our fund balance, or which is the change to fund balance, by $265,000. which puts the ending fund balance for the police department at $2.735 million that we can use for future projects going forward. Most of those dollars will be associated to the next precinct that we build, and then we'll continue to receive revenues over the next 2 years, and those revenues will be used to complete that precinct as well. So that's the that's the police department's fiscal year 21 actual results. Again, the first 7 pages, I did provide budget to actual, so if you have questions on any variances for the police department, at the very top of the financial reports that I provided you, it does tell you what department you're looking at, so if you want to ask any questions on those, I'm happy to answer them. You will see that our budget was, for revenue, was exceeded on every single line item. We do budget on a conservative standpoint for development revenues. The actual revenues are showing, their actual development did come in higher than we budgeted, which is a good thing. But that's why you'll see all the negative numbers on all the reports for revenues, is that the development revenue came in higher than what we projected development to be at. Going back to the Excel file, Excel report there for you, the next department that we're reporting to you is the fire department. Again, same display, same layout. We'll just go over the revenues. We ended the year at $2.2 million of revenues for the fire department. We had 0 operating expenses for the fiscal year. And then we had total capital of $343,000, which generated a positive change to our fund balance of $1.902 million. You add that to the beginning fund balance, and we are projecting that the fire department will have a $7.45 million fund balance for fiscal year 22 moving forward. As you heard from Chief Bloom, we have 2 fire stations in the works, so those funds are all pretty much spent for the next 2 stations. Again, this is what we've been saving for, this is what we've been planning for, and this is what the impact fee studies was written for. So then that $7.4 million, again, looks like a big number, but just to let you know, we have those dollars already pretty much spent for the next 2 fire stations over the next 3 years. And then the last department that we report on is the Parks Department. Looking at their revenues up on top, they had $4.3 million for fiscal year 21 received. Again, 0 operating expenses for the fiscal year. And then they spent some dollars on Discovery Park, which is most likely the design and paperwork. And then you just heard from Mr. Sidaway that council just approved the $12 million contract to move that project forward. So if we had the revenues minus the expenses, we had a positive change to our fund balance of $4.1 million for the fiscal year, which gets us up to an ending fund balance for parks at $15.98 million. Steve just spoke of a $12 million obligation last night, so now we're down to $3 million. But again, most of those dollars are going to be associated to the Discovery Park, which was part of the impact fee plan, which I think allowed us to do a little under 100 acres of land development. So again, these dollars are going to be assisting us to develop those acres of land that we got approved on the impact fee study. And then with the final report on there is just a combination of all 3 departments that we are responsible for, to show you that we brought in $7.058 million of total revenues. We spent $1.28 million in total expenditures, which was a positive change to our fund balance of 5.7, which lands us at $26.166 million for the fund balance for all 3 departments, or for the entire fund itself. After that Excel file, I did provide just a graphical displays of the fund balances, so you can see how the fund balances have moved over the years. It's informational purposes. It's available on the Excel file as well. It's just, I gave you a graph a little bit easier to read at times to show you the current fund balance. Again, police department, we have a precinct that's going to use up to $2.7 million. Fire department, $7.45 million for fire department at the moment. That's going to be allocated to the two fire stations, 15.98 million, Parks Department. Again, Steve has already spoken about 12 million of it. He mentioned that he has another 2 million he needs to use. So you can see 14 of the 15.9 million is pretty much spoken for over the next 24 months. So those numbers will come down as expected. We save before we spend, and we're at the spend moment in our fiscal 21 and 22 budgets. So those are your 21 results. Again, all great results for the City of Meridian. Development strong. We're following the impact fee plan as we got approved by citizens and the council. I think we're still meeting the requirements there. And I'm happy to answer any questions for you if you have any on the fiscal year 21 results that I provided. And if not, again, you can always ask me questions via email. Hey, can you explain this? Can you explain that? I'm happy to go there offline on emails as well.
I've got a question for you.
Oh yeah, Ted.
Have we been tracking the 8-year spending of the funds on a first in, first out basis as it's required? Maybe we should have a conversation offline.
We can have a conversation offline.
There have been some changes to the law that if we're bumping up against that 8-year, we can pass a resolution explaining why there's been a delay and get up to 11. So just want to make sure we are on top of that before it comes up and bites us. We've been trying as hard as we can to spend them, and there are perfectly good reasons why there's been delay with the growth and the contractors. And
I apologize. I understand where you're going. The answer is yes. So the police department has been the one department that we've been tracking on an annual basis because we've not had a big project for you. But since Scenario Village occurred last year and we spent $542,000 of impact fees on that Scenario Village, that helped us out with that 8-year rule. So as you can see, the fire department, or I apologize, the police department in 2014, they were bringing in 168,000. Before that, it was about 125,000. Before that, it was about 110,000. So as Ted was talking about, we have to spend that money within 8 years. That $642,000 that we spent last year bought us 4 years of that income. So we're now got like a 5-year window, but again, with precinct, we're good to go. So I appreciate the question. The Scenario Village was the thing we're hoping for, and we got that to paid. So that did clear us of our 8-year concern. And with 22 involved with all these projects, obviously you have spent every single dollar up to date. So I appreciate that, Ted.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, John.
Does it cover just land acquisition for if we wanted to buy like a park or fire station, or, you know, in other words, the land itself acquisition?
Sure. So the question is, can we use impact fees to buy land and construction? The answer is yes. In the last impact fee study, we were only allowed to buy so much land. I think it was 5 acres, if I recall correctly, of new land, because we had enough land in our, reserves, that when we did our study, cost of service, we only had the ability to buy 5 more without going past our level of service. So the answer is yes, we can buy it, and we have 5 acres, I believe, in the study for new land development, and then I think a little less than 100 acres of development because we had already acquired enough or been donated acreage from development companies and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can add to that, having been involved with the acquisition of the fire station site to the north, we got a kickback deal from the developer, paid very little money. I think it was impact fee eligible. And then the south station, I believe, was bought by the fire district. Is that correct? Yep. Yeah. So, those ones have been taken care of for both the precincts and the fire stations.
Great.
Yeah, Dave? Every year's a little different, but you would be correct. We had a strong year last year. Commercial and multifamily is difficult for us to project, but you're perceiving that correctly. We'll see how this year looks, but if you look at the results, they're very volatile, where residential has been very consistent for us to manage. Mhm. We can definitely do that, we can definitely provide that for you, yes. We have it for every month for every year, yes. And we can provide it. If that's of need, I am happy to run a report to show you where we are on a monthly basis. Nope. We can definitely provide that to you. Okay. If no other questions for fiscal 21, again, if they come up, email me. I'm happy to reply to all and make sure that everyone gets the same question and the same information. And I did add an agenda item on there for fiscal 22. So after the graphs, there is another set of reports or pages, 1, 2, 3, 7 pages again. And these represent the fiscal 22 budget. So this is the budget that was approved for October 1st. So we're just a couple months into this one. I wanted to provide you just a reminder of what was approved for fiscal year 22 for impact fees. So starting at the very top is the police department. You can see we have $3.8 million there for capital outlay. That's our precinct. The precinct itself will be a higher price tag than that, but the citizens and the council agreed that we would use general funds to make up the difference. The fund balance was for police department is currently sitting at, we estimated 2.7. So again, we're hoping for some other cash coming in. If the spend is more than what we have in fund balance, then what we're going to do is we can only spend what we have in impact fees. We'll just do some accounting work and put those extra expenses back onto the general fund, because I can only expend what we have in the impact fees. So again, this was our projection at that time. We'll adjust it accordingly based on the actuals when we start seeing them come through. Because if you did 3.8, you compare it to 2.7, you guys can do the math pretty quickly. Don't have enough money in my impact fees. And we'll manage that throughout the fiscal year. We'll make sure everything's looking good, and we won't put the impact fees in a negative position. We'll use the general fund to make sure it balances out correctly. So that is the police admin department. That's their biggest project. Next page is fire. You'll see that we have some trucks, some vehicles. Those are all associated to both fire stations, some other apparatus like that, which were approved in the impact fee study. So these are just meeting those particular items on that study. Fire station number 7, you'll see that there is the construction cost of that particular project. That's the largest item on fiscal year 22's budget, number 7. And then when you get to number 8, there is no construction cost, because we don't have enough funds in the impact fee that we talked about earlier. So right now the general fund's going to pay for that up front. In our next impact fee study, when we talk about it, we'll have that conversation with our consultant. Do we go back and request a reimbursement to the general fund? That's for us to discuss. But that's why you see nothing in there other than $405,000 for Station 8 construction, because the fire department only has $7.45 million, and we can only budget that much. So that gets you through police and fire. Parks Department, the first one is a little bit of equipment that we're allowed to buy via the impact fee study. The next page is again, more equipment and lawnmowers that were approved by the impact fee studies according to the amount of acreage of land that we acquire and develop. And then the last page is that $14 million number that you heard Steve mention that's associated to Discovery Park. So those are the major projects from a financial report perspective on impact fees and the fiscal year 22 budget. Again, just wanted to provide this as a reminder and an update to you on what was approved by council back in August, and that was effective October 1. And we as a department will manage and execute these budgets accordingly, and I'll provide you updates on those projects throughout the year or 2 years, however long the projects take. Again, the next quarterly meeting, we'll have police provide an update on their precinct so that you can hear from the chief himself on that project. And if there's ever a request from the chief of police or fire or parks, let me know and I can ask them to provide any information to you from an impact fee advisory committee study request that you have. So that's the 22 budget. Any questions on 22's budget proposal?
Todd? I just had one quick question.
Yeah, John?
So if you're spending out of the general fund, can the impact fees pay the general fund back?
Well, that's going to be the great discussion for the next study. The city of Meridian we've not practiced that. I believe legally you can. But again, we're going to get into the legal details in the next study. We're going to make sure that our legal team does their work, the consultant does their work. We want to make sure that we're in the right how we manage that approach. Just because other cities do it doesn't mean that it's right and it's not maybe for us, but that's going to be the great conversation for our committee, legal, and the consultant coming up in the next calendar year.
Thank you.
Feel free to add anything, Ted, if you wish.
Yeah, the scenario that I'm familiar with that Boise uses is that they run the impact fee fund into the negative by borrowing from the general fund. And then as the impact fees come in the general fund's refunded. There's nothing in the state statute that prohibits it, but there's nothing that specifically allows it. It's rarely been challenged because I think the taxpayers like the fact that impact fees are going to pay for growth. However, I do understand accounting and the finance department may have some heartburn on the whole concept. And your predecessor said, no way, no how, no, never. And at least we're discussing it, thinking about it, having the consultant chime in. So look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Ted. Any other questions on the 22 data? Yes, Spencer. Mm-hmm. A fair question. Just to let you know, vehicles like you saw in the fire department, they are allowed in the impact fee approach. We are allowed to use impact fee dollars for vehicles, but the vehicles must have the intended life of at least 10 years. Our current police chief and police staff don't have that as their game plan of, we're going to buy these patrol vehicles and have them intended to be on the road for at least 10 years. So their intention of their vehicle usage is not there. So we have to ask them, is your intended use of this at least 10 years? And if they say no, then we remove it. Where the fire trucks, Chief Bloom says, my intention is to keep this vehicle at least 10 years. Okay, that's allowable impact fee, so we will allocate some funds to that. Unless police department changes their mindset on patrol vehicles and we're going to have the intention of keeping them for at least 10 years, then yes, Spencer, we could allocate and put those into the impact fee study. But at the moment, that is not the current mindset of patrol vehicle management.
Hypothetically, Meridian was contracted to law enforcement services like Eagle and some of the rest of the communities and decided to develop their own police department. Would that be a different scenario for vehicles?
Would we, as a city of Meridian, would we as a city of Meridian own the vehicle, or would it be owned by somebody else?
You contract, as Ada County does, to Eagle,
Mm-hmm.
communities where they provide, my understanding is their vehicles they provide.
They do.
If we were contracted, the same scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and decided to have your own police department, and which would include all the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
would that be a different scenario altogether?
Again, I would look to Ted on this, but I don't believe we would even charge an impact fee if we don't have a police department. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe Eagle charges an impact fee because they are outsourcing 100% of their services to them. Again,
The model that the sheriff uses is that they're county employees using county vehicles. So, yeah, if there's no ownership within the city itself, you can't use impact fees for it. That's not to say that contractually you couldn't work out something different, whereas Ada County might supply just the officers and we supply the equipment. It's a level of service that we're providing to our citizens with equipment owned by the city, so it could be eligible. But again, you run into that 10-year rule. The rotate, you help with the maintenance there at the department, I think, or at least you used to. So you're familiar with the vehicles, and they just don't make it 10 years because of all the idling time and yeah. So last thing we want is an unreliable response vehicle.
and if we did use those dollars, let's say we did decide to do this and it only lasted 5 years, then we would have to refund those impact fees because then we've now deviated from the state statute. Yep. So there is a limitation on what we can use impact fees for. So the two $1 million TI improvements that you're speaking of over at the admin division or admin building. So we were working with the chief on those two requests. And the impact fees are allowed to be used to pay for construction improvements, development that would expand the level of service based on population in our calculations. Since these two projects that that you're referring to, the $1 million projects, neither one of those projects were actually expanding the footprint or the square footage of the building. They were taking this desk and maybe turning it into something else. So we could not just use it to upgrade or improve or anything like that because the impact fee was already paid for this once. We now have to maintain it. If I wanted to add another wing, then I could use that. And that's where the discussions with the chief were, since we weren't adding square footage, I could not use the impact fees because I've already used the impact fees once to build this foot. I can't use it again to build this foot again or improve this foot again, if that makes sense.
Todd, I could also add that we even looked at the fact that remodel potentially had the effect of being able to house more employees in the same square footage. But because our level of service is measured on square footage and not employees, again, we looked at it every which way because that was a big chunk that we wanted to be eligible, but we just couldn't make it work under our methodology.
Thank you, Ted. Any other questions for fiscal '22? If not, we still have one more topic to go. No questions, so we'll move on to the last agenda item, which is to discuss the approach to completing the next impact fee study. So fiscal '21, last fiscal year, council actually did appropriate funds to this committee to conduct an update to the study. We had the conversations last year. It was recommended that let's not open up the study during fiscal year 21. We just got it approved in fiscal 19. It was only 2 years old. Timing of expenditures hadn't occurred yet, and we had those discussions, and we said, let's postpone it until calendar year 22. Calendar year 22 is just a couple months away. Now it's time for us as the committee to have these discussions again. Again, the council has provided you funds for a study. You as the advisory committee have the ultimate say on when you're going to conduct the study. The supporting staff here, we're your supporting staff. We're happy to give you information, but we now need to have that discussion where we as the impact fee committee need to determine, do we want to have the impact fee opened up in 22, calendar year 22? And if so, how do we want to do it? If we don't want to have it opened up in 22, then I will inform council we're going to delay it 1 more year for reasons A, B, and C. But these are the discussions that we as a committee need to start having. Again, funding, we're good. We have the funds there to hire someone to do this. It's now up to us whether or not we want to open this study. So the study was last, again, adopted and approved in 2019. I think it was March-ish, right around there. So we've had it, it's been open for a couple years. Our goal was to always complete one within 5 years. 22 calendar year will be, at that 3-year mark if we make it effective calendar year 23 or whatever. So that gets us that 3.5-year mark. So I'm looking for conversation, discussion with you as a committee. What do we want to consider? Do we want to open it up? Do we not want to open it up? Pros, cons, bad, good. So I'm open conversation at this moment on this topic, how we as a committee want to move forward. And again, happy to give you my thoughts and opinions, but I'll let you, ask me of those. I'll let you guys discuss. Yes, John.
Todd, it was my recollection that the main reason that we did not recommend opening it up was that there were impact fee dollars on the table that could be in jeopardy and would impact future collection of impact fees because of those balances.
I would confirm your statement.
And it appears now that we have projects where dollars are being allocated, and that may not be a concern anymore.
We can confirm that we have 12 million of the parks signed, so that's great. So that's exactly where we want to be. As soon as we get the police precinct contract signed sometime next spring, and as soon as we get the fire department signed, as soon as we get the contract signed, we're allowed to say they're obligated, and we can remove them from these large fund balances, which would have that negative impact on the discussion that you're bringing up, John. So again, we asked you to wait, and you did. We are now at that point, we're getting contracts signed, so I don't think that's a concern of the finance departments anymore, of timing, of fund balance, negatively impacting your ability to collect and not collect for future growth. So I think next calendar year, June, I don't think you'll have any concerns from the finance department from any fund balances, as long as precinct goes as planned, as long as fire stations goes as planned. Steve already has the bulk of his plan done. So we're now just waiting for fire and police to sign those contracts. So again, appreciate those comments, John. That is correct. As soon as we have a contract, just like Steve, that big milestone he mentioned, as long as we have that contract signed, it says we are moving forward, Ted and I have the right to go ahead and take the 27 million and reduce these values as non-available fund balance. So when this consultant works with us, he'll go, how much money do you have available in your savings account or fund balance? And we'll say, well, it's 27 million, but we have 3 contracts signed for 26 million. So we only have $1 million available for blah, blah. So he will use that number instead of 27 million. And that's what we've been waiting for. That's a fun discussion. Ted and I have had this discussion in the past. We'll talk to the consultant as well. Again, Ted, if you have a comment on that, if you wish. Again, I think we have difference of opinions on this one. Again, Ted, if you have a question, I think the consultant will be the ultimate guide on what we do. But if you have any comments, or we just wait until the consultant and we deal with that then.
We'll dive into that.
Okay.
Since you asked me to speak, I'll give my opinion. I think middle of next calendar year would be the time to dive into this. Although we had the 5-year window, there's been so much growth, and as you've already noted, we're collecting way more than we ever anticipated, and the costs have obviously gone up from what they were in the last study. So those are all good reasons to plug all that into the methodology and see where it comes out.
Thank you, Ted.
Todd, I had a
Yes,
question.
John.
If you go through the process of, getting the consultant and all, reevaluate all of the data, if you don't like what you see, do you have to adopt it?
I
Or
think
is
the
we got
answer is,
funds allocated to do a study? Do you,
I think that's your latter is the right answer. I think just because you get a study doesn't mean you're bound by that study. Just like an RFP or RFQ or a construction contract. If we don't like the results, we're not going to go that direction. Could we pay for someone else to do it? Then that falls on my shoulder to go in front of the council. Hey, we need another $48,000 because the previous study results weren't what we thought. But I don't think by any legal law we're bound by that study. I think we can ask for another opinion. And so council, these are the two opinions we have. We think this is the better of the two. We've not done that in the past, but I don't think by law, just because we get a study done and says, well, this is the grail, because we've all stood in front of council with the study and council's gone a completely different direction. But again, Ted, comments on that?
Sure. Yeah, it's like a draft report that you'd hold with your committee as a draft. If there are issues with how the consultant calculated things, you can have that conversation with the consultant at that time. If it's an issue of needing to wait for other things to happen, then you just say, hey, we're going to hold this draft and we will re-evaluate it, at such and such a date. So that's why you can do the work in your committee and not bring it forward. You can certainly report to the council what you've done and why you decided not to go forward and seek direction from them. But all the possibilities are there. There's nothing to force you once you start it to have to end up imposing what the draft might say.
that's good to know. I just, talking with Steve in the Parks Department, I know our level of service, at least, Discovery Park might change that, but the level of service has actually gone down.
Oh, yeah.
And anytime you adopt a new survey, or that's the new standard. So if your standard was 3 acres, and then goes down to 2.5, then all of a sudden that's your new number. And so I just thought if there was some strategic methodology of looking at the data and when to adopt it, to me, that's why you have consultants, but I didn't know what the rules were. So.
Yep. All true statements. Yep.
So seems to me it might make sense to, at least do that, do the consultant thing in 2022, seeing as though all the money's, at least a large percentage of it's going to be spent. Is that a consideration too in the amount of dollars that they think that you need to collect is your fund balances?
In my opinion, it's a factor. I believe you want to have these dollars obligated to the previous study that you've been collecting the monies on, and make sure that those dollars are going towards those projects, because when you build your new study, you want to move forward. You don't want to keep this in the background. It's like, we collected that money, we got it obligated, it's behind us. I want to move forward. That's just my perception and my opinion on how the study should be done. Just let's move forward. This is behind us. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, makes sense. So, for what it's worth.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about just timing here in sequence. It seems like the obligations that are currently, we're hoping are going to happen, will be sometime in, like you said, May, June, that we would have contracts written. The timing to get an RFQ out My guess is that's, going to take staff, a month or so to prepare a document that can get sent out, and then we would have, another, 45 days of reviewing of that. It seems, is there any risk of starting that process, the RFQ process, in February, March, so that by the time we get to June, we could execute a contract?
I don't believe there's any risk there, because when we pick the final winner of that, we can say our intended date of start is July 1st. Even though we select, we finish the process in March, we don't have to start March 2nd. We can say, we have the process, we've selected you as our winner, we would like to make this effective July 1. Our contract team will go ahead and develop that contract with said vendor, effective July 1. They show up and they're ready to roll. So no, I don't think there's any negative to starting the process in February, selecting it, getting that ready to go. So when we are, as a committee, are ready to go, we make the phone call, boom, we have our vendor selected. It's just a matter of plugging and playing. So I don't think there's a concern, Ted, unless you have one.
I don't have a concern, but I have a question whether we've already concluded that we need an RFP.
We have not concluded that yet.
Okay, because we do have the outfit that did it the last time, and because this is a continuation of that, because it's a professional service, we don't necessarily have to. But that decision should probably be addressed. Maybe now's a good time to discuss it, or...
I would agree with you. I was trying to see if they'd be interested in opening it, then if so, then do we want to go? So let's run off of what Ted's talking about. So Raftellus was the company that we used last time. Raftellus was selected via this process that John spoke of. We took they submitted their bids, and we selected Raftellus last time. We as a city have the right to just contact the professional service provider Raftellus. We don't have to go through the bidding process and say, hey, are you interested? Do you have the resources to conduct our next study? They could say no. They have every right to do so, and then we'll obviously then go a different direction. If they say yes, then we're ready to go, and we say we would like to be effective July 1st. Now, we'll give you a little bit of background on the Raftellus company. Dwayne Guthrie, who was our representative, if you remember Dwayne, he's no longer with the company. He has created his own company, which then puts a whole different twist on things. So he has created his own consulting company to conduct impact fee studies throughout America, since he has been doing it. So that's a different discussion with Ted that we can have. Go, hey, now if we want to use that same person because we really like the way he approached it, which might be different than somebody else at Raftellus. Again, there's no one way of doing impact fee studies. So if we really like the way he did it, it won't be with Raftellus per se. And not to say that the people who replaced Dwayne didn't follow the exact same formulas. I don't have that answer. But if we really want Dwayne to run this next study because he ran the first one, I would have to work with Ted, go, hey, we've never conducted business with Dwayne Guthrie LLP. Do I need to do anything special there? But again, that's unless you already know the answer.
I think the answer is yes, you can, again, because it's a professional service. It's not a public works thing where you've got the dollar limit issues. And boy, looking way back in the history of Meridian's impact fees, when we started out in 2004, 2005 with BBC Consulting,
Yes.
The principal that was involved with that was very dynamic, very helpful, got us off the ground, and then he retired, and we were left with whoever they had. And I don't think that was as effective. We stayed with the company, not the person. I think the person who's in charge, the principal, is really more important than the company. If we were happy with Dwayne, I would say we consider engaging him if there's something that was left out. I mean, he brought us into a whole new world. We discovered all different possibilities. I think where we landed was pretty reasonable, but that was the time when we needed to say, hey, we need to shake out of what we've been doing, and by all intents, or by all indications, the development community and the public must be happy with the way it's structured, because we haven't got any complaints, we haven't received any appeals, we haven't received any requests for individual determinations. I mean, and those are all factors that if your impact fee is not geared properly, you'd be getting those. Maybe, John, you've got some perspective on that. Maybe it's just because things are going so rapidly and prices are escalating, and it's just one more thing. I don't know.
I don't know that I mean, I probably just misspoke by asking or stating that maybe an RFQ was needed. So that was my assumption. So if that's not the case, that's fine. I was just trying to figure out what our runway was, what steps we need to jump through, but also put ourselves in the right position to, on the start date.
All right, we agree with you. And if we don't go with Dwayne or Raftellus, we said we want to go a different direction. I think the following your proposal is the right way of going. Let's see what people can offer us. Read what the best thing is, kind of like what we did, 4 years ago. I think that's the best approach for us as a city, because if we don't go with the Raftellus or our pre-existing or previous suppliers. Again, I think it's a fair question, John. It's up to us as a committee to determine that. And I'm happy to go either direction. I'll give you my opinion. When my interactions with Dwayne was very professional. I thought he delivered a solid product, and he brought to the city different perspectives. He listened, and he provided his best guidance to us as a city, hence the final product that we had. I agree with Ted that the previous consultant that we used, the principal was great, then he retired. I can't say the second principal that we inherited was as strong, but that's not to say that the next principal at Raftellus might even blow our minds even more than Dwayne did. Again, it's a risk and reward, but I'm happy to facilitate and administer whichever direction you would like me to go. If you want me to contact Dwayne, because he does run his own business, I'm happy to do so. I do stay in contact with him, and I say, are you interested in a possible contract? If he says yes, then I can bring that back, say he is a possibility. If he says no, at least I can let you know he is not a possibility because of X reasons. If that's helpful, I'm happy to do that, but you just looking for guidance from you guys. Would you like me to reach out to Dwayne and say, if we did open up the impact fee study for calendar year 2022, June, July-ish, would you be interested? Very simple email, he'll reply to me. If you don't want me to reach out to Dwayne, I'm happy not to do that. I can reach out to Raftellus instead. Go, hey, Raftellus Company, we're looking to possibly have a study done in June, July. Do you have the resources, availability, interest of conducting? I can contact both of those for you if you wish. BBC, I haven't talked to BBC. BBC was a company that we previously used. I haven't reached out to them in probably 5 years. I'm sure I can find a contact there. I can reach out to them, but that's up to you guys. I'm happy to administer whichever direction you would like me to go.
Todd? Just my opinion, I think it makes sense to maybe reach out to both of them and see where their interests are
I can do that.
and what they've done on Raftellus, who the principal is, maybe some information
Okay.
so that you can make a good decision. I mean, I agree with, if you've had good history, I do think that the person driving the project is probably the key ingredient to the success of the project, regardless of what the company is still representing, but it would still be good information and at least give you a couple options.
I have no problem reaching out to both companies. And with that, I think you guys have answered the majority of the questions that I had in my head on what we're going to do as a committee next. So if what I'm hearing correctly is we're going to move forward in calendar year 22 to, sorry about that language, to open up the impact fee study. I will be responsible for contacting 2 companies, letting you know if they are or are not available. That guidance then will help dictate which direction we go. If they're available, then we'll have another discussion, go, all right, pick one of these 2. If neither are available, then I think we follow what John was speaking of. We probably go out to RFQ. It takes about 72 days for us to process it from start to finish. So again, earlier start on that I think would be the smarter move. That way June, July gets here, we have our person, our company, and then we can keep that running. But if I'm hearing that's correct, that's what I'm hearing, is that move forward, 22 calendar year, and the process itself will be determined on the results I get from Raftellus and Dwayne Guthrie. Yes. I'll make sure to ask him that if he's going to do it or if he's going to outsource it to Dwayne Jr. Yeah, that's a fair question.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Todd, would it be appropriate to get a feel for costs?
I'm sure Dwayne would give me a comfortable cost over the phone, and we have that relationship with him. I'm not sure Raftellus would run a quick number off for me, but I'm happy to ask. I'm happy to ask him what they would charge.
Because based on all information, whatever you bring back, then the group can decide, are we good with what we've got to consider, or do we want to investigate further? You can continue to do an informal RFP if you have identified the players that might, there aren't that many, that you can reach out to them individually instead of doing a broadcast. I'm not sure we'd end up with anybody that we're not already aware of, but you never know.
Yep, that's fair. No, I can add that as a request of information. It's fair. Well, with that direction you've given me, I'm at the end of our agenda, unless there's another topic someone would like to add to the agenda or just discuss. If not, then I'm happy to adjourn the meeting. So I'll let you know. Any other items, discussion topics? No. So let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 2:08. So again,